The night on the forgotten world was silent, yet the silence itself felt alive. Thick clouds hung in the sky, blocking the faint glow of the stars. The air was heavy, stale, and carried the smell of rust and stone. In this broken place stood a prison, old, but not abandoned. Its walls were carved with symbols that no human had ever seen before, strange markings that seemed to whisper when touched by the dim blue lights that flickered along the halls. The prison was not built for mercy, it was built for fear. Every corner, every corridor felt like it was watching, waiting, keeping secrets buried in its cold stone heart. A human explorer stepped into this place, his boots echoing on the hard floor. He had been following a signal, faint and strange, that had called him across empty space. It was not a normal distress call, not a cry for help like the ones humans were used to. It was broken, weak, and almost lost inside static. But there had been one clear word repeated again and again. Help. That was enough to bring him here, enough to push him past the ruined gates of the prison and into the shadows where no other human had ever walked. His flashlight cut through the dark. Dust floated in the air like ash. Doors were sealed with thick metal, some bent, some broken. He could feel the weight of time pressing down on him. This place had been forgotten by the galaxy, left to rot. Yet something still lived here. The silence was not empty. It was filled with a quiet dread, like the prison itself was holding its breath. The human could almost hear it, the echo of chains, the whisper of a cry that never ended. Then he heard it. A sound so faint it could have been his imagination. It was not the creak of metal or the hum of machines. It was softer, wet, broken, and human in its sadness. It was the sound of tears. He froze, listening. The sound came again, faint but clear. Someone was crying. Not a machine, not an echo of the past. Someone alive. He followed the sound through the maze of corridors. His light shook across walls covered in scratches, as if desperate hands had clawed at them once long ago. The air grew colder, heavier, until he found himself at the end of a hallway, standing before a cell sealed with rusted bars and ancient locks. Behind those bars, in the dim blue glow of a single dying light, he saw her. A small figure sat curled in the corner of the cell. Her skin was blue, faintly glowing under the weak light, and her long hair fell like a curtain of silver around her face. She was thin, far too thin, as if life had been drained from her day by day. Her clothes were gone, replaced only with scraps of cloth that barely clung to her frame. Her knees were pulled to her chest, arms wrapped tightly as if she could protect herself from the darkness around her. Her eyes, wide and wet with tears, lifted slowly toward the sound of his steps. For a long moment, neither moved. The human felt his breath catch. She was not like the other aliens he had seen before. She looked fragile, almost doll-like, her beauty mixed with an unbearable sadness. She did not speak. She only stared, and her tears slid silently down her cheeks, falling onto the cold floor. The human stepped closer to the bars. His light revealed the chains around her wrists and ankles, heavy iron bound with strange symbols. Whoever had locked her here had not wanted her to leave, ever. The chains were old but strong, fused with alien technology he could not understand. And yet, despite everything, she still lived. Somehow, she had survived this prison of despair, though her body shook with weakness. "Who are you?" he whispered, but his voice sounded too loud, too rough in the quiet air. The girl flinched at the sound, pressing herself tighter into the corner. She did not answer. Her lips trembled, but no words came. Only another tear fell, shining in the foul, dim light. The human felt a chill crawl up his spine. This was not just a prisoner. This was something more, something deeper. No records had spoken of her. No history had whispered her name. She had been erased, hidden in the dark, forgotten by all but the walls of this prison. And now he had found her. But why was she here? Who had locked her away? Was she dangerous? Or was she just a victim of cruelty beyond imagination? The human's mind raced with questions, but his heart tightened with something else. Pity. Anger. A desire to reach through the bars and free her. Because no being, human or alien, deserved to live in chains, stripped of hope, left only with tears. The prison groaned as if it too was alive, warning him, whispering that he should leave before. It was too late, but he did not move away. He kept his eyes on the girl on the way her tears glistened in the cold light. And in that moment, he understood one thing. This was no accident. This was not just a lost prisoner. This was a secret the galaxy had, buried, a secret he had been meant to find. As the silence stretched, broken only by her quiet sobs, the human realized something else. This was only the beginning. The human stood frozen at the bars, his light shaking as his eyes scanned the strange carvings on the walls. They were not random scratches. They were symbols, lines, curves, and marks that glowed faintly whenever the beam touched them. At first, he thought they were just the desperate scribbles of past prisoners clawing against stone in madness. But no, these were not cries for help. These were warnings. He leaned closer, tracing the faint glow with his eyes. The symbols told of fear. They showed figures, tall, armored shapes holding weapons unlike anything he had ever seen. And among them was always the same figure, a small form, chained, weeping, glowing faintly. His heart sank. These walls were not simply decorated. They were written to remind every soul who entered what had been locked inside. The girl shifted, her chains rattling softly in the silence. The sound echoed down the hallway, louder than it should have been. She hugged her knees tighter, her eyes flickering between him and the darkness behind her, as if she expected something else to emerge from the shadows. The human spoke softly. "How long have you been here?" Her lips parted. A sound came, broken, dry, almost more breath than voice. Long time. Her head shook slightly, strands of silver hair falling across her face. No sun, no time. Only dark. The human's chest tightened. Her voice was soft, fragile, like glass ready to break. He tried to ask more, but she only closed her eyes and shook her head again, as if the weight of remembering was too much. Tears traced down her cheeks, leaving small glowing lines against her blue skin. His hand tightened on the bars. Something inside told him this place was wrong. Not just a prison, not even torture. It was worse. It was silence. A silence so deep, it could erase a person's very soul. He stepped back, scanning the hall. The other cells were empty, doors bent or broken, but none held life. Only this one. Only her. "Why only you?" he whispered under his breath. The girl's eyes opened, staring at him with a strange mix of fear and sadness. "Because they feared me." The words struck him like a blade. He blinked, unsure if he heard correctly. "Feared you?" She nodded slowly, her thin shoulders trembling. "Not for what I did, but for what I could do." The human's heart pounded. Her chains, her prison, the warnings on the walls, it all began to make a dark kind of sense. She had been locked away not because she was weak, but because she was dangerous. Dangerous enough to be hidden from the galaxy, buried alive in this place of despair. And yet, looking at her now, she did not seem dangerous at all. She looked like a broken child, too thin to stand, too weak to even wipe her own tears. What power could she hold? What could she possibly have done? The human swallowed hard. What did they fear? Her lips trembled, but before she could answer, a low hum filled the corridor. The human stiffened. It was not his imagination. The air itself vibrated, faint but growing stronger. His flashlight flickered. The girl's eyes widened, her tears drying as fear replaced sorrow. She looked past him, down the hallway toward the dark. "They watch," she whispered. Her chains rattled again as she pulled herself tighter into the corner. They always watch? The human spun, his light racing across the corridor. Nothing. Empty halls, dead doors, silent stone. Yet the hum grew louder, the air colder. He could feel it now crawling over his skin, crawling inside his mind. He lifted his weapon, ready, but something deep inside told him it would not be enough. And then he saw it. From the far end of the hallway, deep in the black, a faint red glow appeared. Small at first, like the eye of a machine. Then another, and another. Pairs of glowing red orbs lit one by one, advancing slowly through the dark. His heart pounded. Guardians. Machines. Whatever had been left behind to keep watch, to make sure no one opened this cell, were waking. The girl whimpered, curling tighter, shaking her head. They will not let me go. The human raised his weapon higher, stepping back until his shoulders pressed against the cold bars of her cell. His breath came fast, misting in the air. The red lights grew closer, and he could hear the metallic scrape of feet dragging against the stone floor. The prison was not abandoned, it was alive, and it had just noticed him. The red eyes in the darkness moved closer, their glow reflecting off the damp stone walls. The human steadied his weapon, his finger hovering over the trigger. His breath slowed, his heart hammering inside his chest. The machines were coming. Whatever they were, they had been left here for one reason: to guard the girl, to make sure she never walked free. The chains rattled again as the girl shrank further into the corner, her glowing blue skin trembling. She whispered, barely audible, "They will not stop. They never stop." Her voice was filled with a kind of fear that no child should ever know. The human turned his head toward her, his jaw tightening. He could see it in her eyes. This was not the first time she had heard those footsteps. She had lived with them for years, maybe centuries, as they marched in the dark, always watching, always waiting. The machines stepped into view. Their frames were tall and thin, their bodies made of black metal lined with glowing red veins. They moved with unnatural grace, their feet scraping softly against the stone floor. Each one carried a weapon fused into its arm, glowing with a faint red light. Their heads were smooth and round, their eyes unblinking, glowing like fire. The human aimed, but before he could fire, the girl whispered again, "Do not fight them. Not yet." Her words startled him. He turned back toward her, confusion flashing across his face. "Not yet? They'll kill us." The girl shook her head, her chains clinking softly. "Not if I stop them. But you must release me." Her words hung in the air like a blade. The human froze, torn between instinct and fear. Release her? These machines had been built to guard her, not the prison itself. She was the reason they were here. If he broke her chains, what would he unleash? The machines advanced, their eyes glowing brighter. The hum in the air deepened, vibrating through the walls, through his bones. The human raised his weapon again, but a voice inside screamed at him. It would not be enough. He could fight, he could shoot, but these machines would tear him apart. And then, for the first time, he saw something new in the girl's eyes. Not just fear, not just despair. Something buried deep within. Something dangerous. "Why are you here?" he demanded, his voice sharp, urgent. "What are you?" The girl's lips trembled. She looked down at the chains, her thin fingers brushing against the glowing symbols carved into the iron. Her voice came out broken, but each word cut deep. "I was made. Not born. A creation. A weapon for war. My people built me. But when they saw what I was becoming, they feared me. So they locked me here. They left me in the dark." The human's breath caught. A weapon. That explained everything. The chains, the machines, the symbols on the walls. She was not just a prisoner. She was something more. Something dangerous. Enough for her own people to erase her existence. The girl's tears glistened as she looked up at him again. "I never asked for it, I never wanted it. But they said I would bring death, that I would destroy everything, so they chained me. and let me rot. The machines were almost upon them now, their red glow filling the hallway. The humans' hands shook. He felt the weight of her words pressing into him. If he freed her, would he be saving an innocent child, or unleashing the very thing her people had feared? The girl's voice grew stronger, desperate. If you leave me here, they will kill you. If you free me, I can protect you, but you must choose. The hum grew into a roar. The machines raised their weapons, red light charging in their arms. The human's pulse raced. He had no more time. With a deep breath, he made his choice. He dropped his weapon to his side, stepped closer to the bars, and pressed his hand against the cold metal chains. They were covered with strange alien symbols glowing faintly. His fingers burned the moment they touched it, a sting that shot fire through his veins. He gritted his teeth, pulling hard, feeling the chains resist. The girl gasped, her eyes widening. As the glow in the symbols began to flicker, the machines stopped moving. Their heads tilted, their red eyes narrowing. They could feel it too. Something was happening. The human pulled harder, his muscles straining, the heat biting into his flesh. The chains cracked, a thin line of light splitting down the center. The girl cried out, not in pain, but in shock, her body trembling as energy coursed through her. And then, the chains shattered. Blue light exploded through the cell, flooding the corridor with blinding brilliance. The machine stumbled, their red eyes flickering. The girl fell forward onto her knees, her breath ragged, her skin glowing brighter than ever before. The human stumbled back, shielding his eyes. When he looked again, the girl was standing. No longer trembling, no longer broken. Her chains lay shattered on the floor, glowing faintly before turning to dust. Energy pulsed around her body, blue and fierce, crackling like lightning. The machines roared, stepping forward to attack. But the girl raised her hands, and in that moment, the truth was revealed. She was not just a prisoner. She was power itself. Blue. Energy burst from her palms, a storm of light that tore through the machines like paper. Metal screamed as their bodies shattered, collapsing into heaps of glowing ash. The air shook, the ground trembled, and then silence returned, broken only by her heavy, ragged breaths. The human stared at her, stunned. The girl looked back at him, her eyes no longer weak or broken, but blazing with a power that had once terrified her own people. And yet, he could still see the tears, still see the sadness in her face. "I did not want this," she whispered, her voice shaking. "But now, you know the truth." The human's chest tightened. He had freed her, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The air still shimmered with the fading glow of blue energy. The corridor smelled of burning metal, the remains of the shattered machines scattered across the floor. Smoke curled upward from their broken frames, and the silence that followed felt even heavier than before. The human lowered his weapon slowly, his hands shaking, not from fear of the machines, but from what he had just seen. The girl stood in the center of the cell, no longer a fragile figure curled in despair. Her body glowed faintly, her silver, hair flowing as if caught in a breeze that did not exist. Her chest rose and fell with sharp breaths, her eyes shining brighter than before. But behind the glow, there was something else. Pain. Sadness. She was powerful, yes, but she was also afraid of herself. The human stepped closer, his voice quiet but steady. "That power, it was inside you all this time?" The girl lowered her head, tears glistening again. "I never asked for it. I never wanted it. But it lives inside me. It grows, even when I try to hide it. My people, they saw me as a curse. They said I would bring destruction, so they locked me here, locked me." She lifted her chained wrists, now free, her skin scarred where the iron had burned her. "They called me dangerous. But I was only a child." Her voice cracked on the last word. For a moment, the glow around her faded, and she looked small. Again, just a girl lost in darkness, abandoned, left to cry alone. The human's chest tightened. He thought of Earth, of humanity's long history of being called weak, dangerous, or unworthy by those who thought themselves stronger. Humans had been underestimated, feared, even hated. And yet, they had survived. They had fought back. They had carved their place in the galaxy through courage, through defiance. Was this girl so different? Was she not also a victim of fear and cruelty? He took a slow breath and spoke again. Listen to me. Whatever they feared, whatever they believed, you are not their weapon. You are not their curse. You are alive. You deserve to live free. The girl looked up, her eyes wide. Her lips trembled as if she wanted to believe him but could not. But if I lose control again, if I hurt you, the human stepped closer, placing his hand against the cold bars between them. Then I will remind you who you are. Not a weapon, not a prisoner, a living being who deserves a chance. His voice was firm now, carrying the weight of conviction. If humanity can fight to survive in a galaxy that hates and fears us, then you can fight too. Not against us, but with us. The girl's breath caught. Her tears slowed, her glowing eyes searching his face for any sign of doubt. But he did not flinch, did not step back. He meant every word. For the first time, a faint spark of something new lit her expression. Hope. Her voice shook as she whispered, "You would trust me? Even after what you saw?" "Yes," he said without hesitation. "Because I see more than your power. I see your pain, and I see your will to survive. That is what makes you strong." The prison groaned around them, as if the very walls disagreed with his words. The air grew colder, the shadows deeper. Somewhere in the distance, another alarm began to hum, faint but growing. More guardians were coming. The danger was far from over. The girl flinched at the sound, fear flashing in her eyes again. But this time she did not retreat into the corner. She did not curl into herself. She stood, her thin frame shaking, but she remained on her feet. She looked at him, her voice barely above a whisper. "If I walk with you, if I fight beside you, will they accept me?" The human's face hardened. He thought of Earth, of the countless battles humanity had fought, of the allies and enemies they had gained. He could not promise her acceptance. He could not promise safety. But he could promise one thing. They will not decide for you. You will decide. And I will stand with you. The words seemed to break something inside her. Something heavy. Something that had chained her heart longer than the iron on her wrists. A sob escaped her lips, but it was different this time. It was not just sorrow. It was release. Slowly, hesitantly, she reached out through the bars, her glowing hand trembling. The human hesitated only a moment before taking it. Her skin was warm, almost burning with the energy flowing inside her. For a second, he felt a surge, like lightning racing through his veins. But he did not pull away. He held her hand tightly, grounding her, steadying her. And in that moment, she was no longer just a prisoner. She was no longer just a weapon. She was someone who had been given a choice. The hum of the alarms grew louder. The ground trembled slightly as heavier footsteps echoed from the distance. More machines, more guardians. Perhaps something far worse was coming. The girl's grip tightened on his hand. The human raised his weapon again, glancing toward the dark corridor. Then he looked back at her, his voice steady. "We fight together now. Whatever comes, you are not alone anymore." Her glowing eyes locked on his, and for the first time she nodded, not in fear, but in resolve. The prison roared as doors opened in the distance, the sound of grinding stone and metal filling the halls. Shadows stretched toward them, long and jagged. The storm was coming. But the human and the alien girl stood together, side by side, their bond forged not in chains or fear, but in choice. And the galaxy would soon learn what happens when despair meets humanity's will. The ground trembled under their feet as the sound of heavy doors opening echoed through the endless corridors. The air grew colder, charged with a low vibration that seemed to crawl beneath the skin. The human gripped his weapon tightly, the girl's glowing hand still clutching his. Her eyes were locked on the darkness ahead, fear flickering inside them, but also something new, resolve. She was no longer a silent prisoner hiding in a corner. She was ready to face what was coming. From the shadows, they emerged. Larger than the first machines, these guardians towered over the human, their frames plated with thick armor, their red eyes glowing like burning coals. Their steps were slow but heavy, every strike of their feet against the stone floor shaking dust loose from the ceiling. Their arms were fitted with weapons unlike anything the human had seen, spinning blades fused with glowing energy cores. Cannons built into their shoulders that hummed with deadly power. These were not watchers. These were executioners. The human raised his weapon, his breath steady though his pulse raced. He knew his rifle would barely scratch these monsters, but he would not back down. If humanity had taught the galaxy anything, it was that humans never surrendered, not to fear, not to despair, not even to impossible odds. The girl's grip tightened on his hand and her voice came soft but strong. "Stay behind me. If I fall, run." The human shook his head firmly. "We fight together, remember?" Her glowing eyes widened slightly, and for the briefest moment she smiled. It was small, almost invisible, but it was there. Then her face hardened, and she stepped forward. The air around her shimmered with energy, blue sparks dancing across her skin. The scars on her wrists glowed faintly, pulsing like veins of light. The guardians raised their weapons, their red eyes focusing on her. A low mechanical roar filled the hall, and the first of them lunged forward, its blade arms spinning like a storm of fire. The girl raised her hands. Blue light burst from her palms, a wave of raw energy that slammed into the machine with explosive force. Metal screamed as the guardian was thrown back, crashing into the wall with such power that the stone cracked around it. The others did not hesitate. Two more advanced, their cannons glowing as they prepared to fire. The human fired his rifle, his shots striking sparks against the machine's armor. It was not enough to destroy them, but it was enough to distract, enough to slow their aim. One turned toward him, its cannon charging, but before it could fire, the girl let out a cry, a sound of both fear and fury, and unleashed another surge of power. Blue lightning shot across the hall, wrapping around the machine's limbs, freezing it in place. Its red eyes flickered wildly before its body collapsed, smoke pouring from its cracked frame. The human stared in awe, his breath caught in his throat. He had seen weapons, he had seen bombs, but nothing like this. This was raw, untamed energy, alive, furious, unstoppable. But it was also breaking her. He saw her knees tremble as she pushed the power out, her breaths coming short and ragged. Her hands shook and her tears returned, not from fear this time, but from the pain of holding back something too big, too wild. She was not in control. She was barely standing. "Stop!" the human shouted, stepping forward, catching her arm. "You'll burn yourself out." She shook her head, her glowing hair whipping around her face. "If I stop, you die." Her voice cracked with strain. "I cannot let that happen." The human's jaw tightened. He looked into her eyes, seeing not a weapon, not a curse, but someone who had suffered too long. And now she was breaking herself apart just to protect him. His hand gripped hers, grounding her, his voice firm. "Then don't fight alone. Let me fight with you." Her eyes widened, and in that moment, something changed. The light around her flared brighter but steadier, as if his words had anchored her. Her breathing slowed, her tears drying. She nodded once, sharp and certain. The guardians roared again, more of them pouring into the hall. The floor shook as at least 6 now advanced, their weapons glowing brighter, their movements faster. The human and the girl stood side by side, facing the storm. "Together," the human whispered. The girl raised her hands and the human raised his rifle. The first guardian lunged, and in a flash of blue and steel, the battle began. The corridor became a war zone. Blue lightning tore through the air, ripping machines apart, while the human darted between blasts, firing at weak spots, covering her flanks. The machines struck back with relentless force, their cannons firing bolts of red energy that shattered stone and scorched the ground. The air was filled with smoke, sparks, and the deafening sound of war. One guardian swung its blade arm toward the human, but before it could land the blow, the girl screamed and sent a shockwave of energy that ripped the machine in half. She fell to her knees, trembling, but the human was already there, pulling her back to her feet. "You're not alone," he said again, his voice steady despite the chaos. Not anymore. Her eyes burned with light as she stood, her power crackling stronger than ever. The guardians hesitated for the first time, their red eyes flickering. They could sense it. The balance had shifted. The prisoner was no longer broken. She was no longer chained. And with humanity at her side, she was unstoppable. The last of the machines fell, its body shattering under a storm of blue lightning and human fire. The corridor went silent again, filled only with smoke and the sound of their ragged breaths. The girl fell to her knees, tears streaming down her glowing face. The human knelt beside her, resting a hand on her shoulder. "You fought," he said softly. "You chose to fight." She looked up at him, her voice shaking but strong. "Not because I am a weapon, because I want to live." The human nodded. "And you will. We'll make sure of it." But even as he said the words, the prison groaned again. The walls shook, dust falling from the ceiling. A deep rumbling sound echoed from far below, something older, something greater than the machines. The storm was not over. It had only just begun.